Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for the big day. Yes, it's the new project reveal. Well, what is this project, I hear you say? Well, let me lay a little bit of it out. It's a car. It's an old car. It's not a bloody wrecked supercar. It's not the cheapest one of these that I could find on bloody Marketplace or Gumtree or anything. It wasn't bought sight unseen. It is, however, a bit of a classic car, and I'm sure you guys will like it a lot. So, Trevor, stop fucking around, I hear you say. Go and get the car and bring it in. Well, I'll go and do that right now. But first, let's see who of you out there can pick what car it is by the sound of the idle. When I turn it on, it's just outside the door here. I'll fire her up, and you'll have a few seconds to work out what it is before you see it. There it is, folks. The cat's out of the bag now. And for those of you that guessed correctly, yes, you're right. It's a Z32 300ZX 2+0 twin turbo 5-speed manual. Original in its configuration, but you could probably tell not in its build. There's a lot of things wrong with this car, folks. A hell of a lot of things. And that's why she's here in the Aussie Shed. This car is going to undergo a complete rebuild right here in the shed. And what's wrong with it, I hear you say? Well, pretty much everything. The paintwork is rooted. The interior, every single piece of plastic in the interior has either the clips missing, broken, the screws are missing, the whole interior is loose. You can't drive it without everything rattling and falling apart on you. The thing has been unloved for a very, very long time. It was so filthy inside. I've spent 3 days cleaning the interior of the car to get it looking somewhat presentable, because honestly, folks, I was too embarrassed to even show you any footage here on the Aussie Shed. So I've had all the interior bloody soaking in plastic and rubber and vinyl restorer, you know, just to get it at least presentable. I've cleaned it, vacuumed it. The carpet mats on the front floor, I actually started cleaning them and ended up using a really powerful high pressure cleaner just to get all of the filth out of the pile of the carpet mats. It was that dirty. So why did I buy this car, I hear you say, considering it's such a POS? Well, for me personally, folks, it's kind of what I want. You know, I like building my own cars. I'm not the sort of person that buys a car that's already built. And realistically, and honestly, folks, there's some bloody good content here for the Aussie Shed right here in this car. So what are the positives of the car, I hear you say, Trevor? Why the hell did you buy such a piece of crap? Let me just say there are some positives to it. To begin with, as I mentioned, it's an original twin-turbo 5-speed manual, 2-seater, target top vehicle. All that checks out with the compliance plates. It's not an NA that's been converted. It's not a bloody auto that's been converted to a manual. It's the real deal, folks. I've actually had a bit of a thing for these cars since I very first saw them in the late 80s, early 90s. I've always wanted one. I've always kind of followed the cars and, you know, followed some really nice builds that people have done. But I've always had other things going on. I've had other vehicles, and I figured the time was right with the price of these, you know, late 80s and 90s Japanese turbo vehicles going through the roof. This is probably one of the last models that's nowhere near reached its potential value, just due to the fact that this was never really a hero car in that period because they're so difficult to work on. Mind you, they are bloody good vehicles. They handle extremely well when they're set up, and they are just a really nice car to drive. The target tops makes them a car that you can cruise around in on weekends and things like that. Take the tops off, not have the hassles of a convertible, but yet still have all of the benefits of it. It is, however, getting very long in the tooth. This is a 1989 model. So currently it's 32 years old, and it's really sort of showing its age. The car had a lot of work done on it, from what I'm led to believe, about 6 years ago. Whether or not that's true, I tend to think the timeline might be a little bit longer than that, just going by everything that I can see on the vehicle. But since the car had a lot of rebuild work done on it, and most of that rebuild work was just mechanical. It's since been through 2 other owners. Builds like this, once they kind of hit the open market and head into the hands of people with little experience with vehicles like this, particularly if they were never really finished off that well to begin with, they require a lot of money and a lot of effort put into them to make them a nice car. This thing at the moment, it's not a nice car to drive. It's an absolute pig. It has a really heavy, really aggressive twin plate clutch in it, which you saw by the way I stalled it on the way in here. And I was trying really hard not to, folks. I just didn't want to goddamn embarrass myself. But it's too late. It also has pretty aggressive cams fitted to the engine, folks, so that just makes it even worse. So let's go for a bit of a walk around, folks, and you can see it all for yourself. So yeah, folks, the paintwork, it's probably hard for you to see it on camera, but it's just absolutely shagged. You sort of see how faded out it is and stuff. Over here we go. I'll take you up the back and you can sort of see what this is. You can see here there's just no clear coat left on it. A little bit of a rust bubble there, and you know, it's had a bit of hail damage I think on it at some point. There's dents in the spoiler, typical with these spoilers of this era. She's pretty rooted, folks. It's all coming apart, you know, like they're just shit. It's got a massive big bubble in it over here, which is sort of not good. It has, however, had like the late model JDM treatment with the tail lights and the center panel, which is all brand new, and that's absolutely fantastic. You can see the exhaust sort of sticking out the back there. It's got some pretty big twin pipes. The exhaust system's seen better days. It's looks like either a 3-inch or a 2.5-inch system. There's no X pipe or Y pipe in it. There's only just sort of mufflers on the back, and it is really loud, folks. And it sounds, well, it doesn't sound that great as far as I'm concerned. Another thing to note, you can see there's no wiper on it. I took the wiper off because I was really worried it was going to end up scratching the glass up. I've got it somewhere over here. Here it is. Okay. So yeah, it's got the very sort of auto salon style end on it. So there's no friggin' rubber on it. The rubber is just gone, like, you know. It's barely hanging in there. I was very concerned this was going to scratch the glass up, because that exact thing has happened with the front windscreen glass. You can see it's got the same wipers on there. Wiper arms are pretty sort of corroded looking and everything. But you can see this one isn't sitting in there properly, and there's a big sort of a big scratch in the glass going up through here. It's really quite bad. The front windscreen is pretty much rooted. It's going to have to be replaced. The tint strip across the top's all faded out. There's just basically a little bit of blue in the middle with brown either side of it. It looks absolutely terrible. You can see from here the dashboard's all lifted across where the vent is. That's pretty standard on these things when they've been sort of left out in the sun. Targa roof, you can see the hook section in the middle. It's got no ends on it. You know, it's sort of pretty shagged. All the rubbers and that aren't real great. All the windscreen mouldings and the Targa mouldings, all the paint's long gone off those, and they've all got a lot of dents in them. Probably from hail, I reckon. There's a few little dents across the top. Came with a spare bonnet, or a spare hood, if you're in the US, which I think was the original hood. I think this is a replacement. And the hood that came with it had quite bad hail damage on it as well, which I think was the, as I say, was the original. I say this thing's been in a hailstorm at some point. Probably not that bad a hailstorm. The bonnet being aluminium, it's been more affected than everything else. There's barely a mark in the guards and along the sort of, you know, the tops of the doors and all that sort of stuff, and the back of the hatch really, other than the spoiler. So it's sort of, you know, it's not really that big an issue. You can see all the clear coats peeling everywhere off the front bar. Front bar is actually, she's broken and pretty rooted. It's all sort of coming apart here. While we're here, you can see the wheels. Actually, I'll go around the other side. You can probably see it a bit better. There's more light. So it's got these wheels on it. They seem like some sort of a lightweight forged wheel. I couldn't find a brand on the back of them. Can't read what the center says. But the weird thing is, folks, even though they look the same front and back, they've got the same centers in them, but they're actually different wheels. The wheel on the front there, it's an 18-inch rim, And the one on the back here, it's got more of a square lip, and it's actually a 17-inch rim. They both run in 235 tyres on them, so not a real wide tyre. But yeah, sort of a mismatched set, which I just find really odd, particularly due to the fact that they have the same centres. I don't know whether this was a thing at some point. Maybe if anyone out there knows, you might be able to fill me in and say, why did people do this sort of thing? Or who knows, was it just some retarded thing with this car? You can see the side blinker markers there, they're just completely faded out and shagged. Brakes are standard size, slotted discs all the way around, front and back, with standard calipers. The car did come with some front caliper brackets, which are used to move the caliper outwards and fit 350Z discs. So it does have that. Not really my cup of tea. It's still not really where I want to go with the brakes. I'm going to do a major big brake upgrade on the car, right round all four corners. So unfortunately, you know, those brackets aren't really any good to me. There doesn't appear to be any rust externally in the car, other than those couple of little spots that you saw on the Targa top there. Visually, the outside of it is actually really clean. There doesn't appear to be any sort of repaired accident damage. It all seems fairly original, other than the bonnet that's been replaced from a bit of hail damage. You know, the car's pretty straight. It does have lumps and bumps and knocks and, you know, just signs of age and all that sort of thing. Got a bit of a dent in the quarter panel there. Right, I might open the hatch up and have a look in here. I'll just have to put a clamp on one of the struts, folks. The back struts are completely rooted, so they'll fall on my head if I don't do this. Alright, so in the back, you can see our little cover here is just completely shagged out. There's just basically nothing left of that. That covers the top of the fuel tank access points and all that sort of thing. Everything in the back here is sort of loose, and you can see a lot of the trim pieces are broken, and all this stuff's all faded out. Like I say, I've put a lot of effort into cleaning all this up, and using vinyl restoration products and things like that to even getting it look this good, and I've vacuumed the shit out of it because it looked terrible. And honestly, folks, just opening the back hatch there, I've nearly friggin' passed out from the stink of this thing. This thing smells so bad. It's got that sort of typical smell that cars used to come in with when they were imported from Japan in the sort of late 90s and 2000s. They would absolutely reek of cigar smoke and soy sauce. And it's such a horrible smell, and mate, this thing has it in spades. It's soaked in, because it's got a fabric interior, it's soaked into all the fabric. It's just terrible. All of the hard surfaces, all the plastics and stuff, I've been over those cleaning them. I actually went over everything with wax and grease remover, even all the glass, because every time I'd wipe something, you'd just get this brown scum off of everything, which was like, you know, tar and nicotine and all that sort of stuff. Which is really surprising, considering the car's been in the country for probably 20 years, and the fact that it still had all that crud on it from when it was originally imported. It's like it's never been properly cleaned. The stuff that was on the glass was just horrendous. You'd sort of wipe the glass, just one pass, and I was using paper towel, and it would be black. You'd have to throw it away, get more paper towel, wipe another bit, and it would be black, you know. It's just taken so much cleaning. Same with all the vinyl. You'd wipe it over and there'd be just this brown scum coming off everything. Yeah, it's just, mate, it's just horrendous. And everything in the car has like this sort of nicotine staining. The interior lights and everything are all brown and all that sort of stuff. And the friggin' seats and the tweed fabric and everything just stinks. I have vacuumed this. Like I say, I've taken the mats out and I've pressure cleaned them to get them sort of half decent again, because they are the original mats, which I kind of like that about it. But the tweed interior, it's going to have to go. It's in a fairly poor condition, or some of it's in a fairly poor condition, but the smell, you would just never get the smell out of this car. So it's going to have a full interior done on it, which thankfully, you know, I'd probably do anyway, but this thing has to have it done because it just stinks so bad. You can see in the back here, it's had a battery relocation done to it. Why? I've got no idea. All this does is it basically means you've got nowhere to store the Targa tops, because you know your Targa tops fit in here very neatly. If you go and put a bloody battery in the back, it just sort of fucks that up, which to me is just crazy. But I've had a bit of a look in the front, and where the battery normally sits, like the battery tray area, is actually quite rusted. So I figure, I don't know, maybe that's why the battery was put in the boot. I got no idea. It just doesn't seem like, you can say, oh yeah, weight transfer and this and that, but that's just kind of a bit ridiculous on a car like this. Why you'd take up the small amount of luggage space and storage space that you have for your Targa tops and anything, it's beyond me. Anyway, I'll move on from there, and we'll head into the interior, folks. Now, bear with me, folks. This looks a hell of a lot better than it did when I actually bought the car. It's clean-ish to a point. You can see the mats are all sort of pretty clean. All the door trims and all that sort of stuff's pretty good. You can see the steering wheel here is just an absolute friggin' mess, which is typical of most of these vehicles, unless they've had the steering wheel restored or never been really out in the sun. But obviously that's something that's going to have to be fixed up. And you can see the tweed is just basically worn off on the driver's side over here. It's down to the sort of base of the fabric. So you can see there the driver's seat's got a bit of a hole in it, and it's got some friggin' filthy staining and stuff on it, like someone's friggin' sweated and crapped themselves in the seat. Basically, mate, sitting in this thing, you were worried about catching something before I sort of cleaned it, and it's still a little bit that way, but at least it's reasonably clean. As I mentioned, all the trim stuff's kind of loose, and you know, everything's kind of coming apart. The thing's been pulled apart many times by God knows who, and they've either broken all the clips or they've lost all the screws. So much of this all needs sort of replacing. I've actually already put a very large order into Nissan Japan for replacement components. Most of it is for the interior and bits relating to the Targa tops and just various clips and seals and plastic pieces and all that sort of stuff. And I'm about to put another order in, or several other orders into some of the aftermarket companies that make components that are no longer available through Nissan. Unfortunately, most of those are in the US. There is a couple of companies in Australia, but they seem to be out of stock of a lot of stuff, so I'm trying to sort of put lists together of stuff that I need and get everything underway so that I'm not going to be waiting on stuff when I start tearing into this thing. You can see it's even got the rocket launcher switch there, so you know it's fast. If you see that rocket launcher button there, mate, you know this is a fast car. So on from that, folks, you can see we've got a Ruszik EM Pro 2 display up there, which back in the day was a great bit of gear. It's pretty sort of old hat by now. It just gives you capacity to display the readouts from a lot of your sensors. The car also has a Haltech ECU fitted to it, quite an old Haltech that's not really supported by Haltech any longer, but nonetheless it does have an aftermarket ECU fitted to it. You can see it's got bloody shift lights and all this sort of stuff. There's a Blitz turbo timer sitting over there, which is going to go. All this stuff's going, folks. Basically what I'm going to be doing is returning the car back to a standard looking vehicle, but just, you know, a very nice, more modern standard sort of a vehicle. As I say, it's going to get a complete interior retrim. I think the original seats will stay, just sort of retrim version. I won't be putting race seats or anything like that in it, and just basically everything is going to be renewed. See, the A-pillar on that side's missing. I actually have that here. It was held on with just some Velcro and sort of fell off while I was cleaning it. All the clips and tabs and everything were broken on it, so I've ordered a new one from Japan for that. You see there's a Targa top latch and everything on that side, but it is actually broken, and this side over here doesn't have one at all. So they've all been ordered from Japan. You know, there's no covers on the tops of the seat belts. You know, just the typical sort of stuff. It's got an aftermarket gear knob which kind of doesn't fit, and the boots are all rooted and all that sort of stuff. It's got a stereo system. It's a no-name brand Chinese kind of a flip-up screen DVD player thing that's probably quite old. It doesn't have CarPlay or anything like that sort of fitted to it, and basically when you push the power button and the screen flips out, the thing near throws itself out of the dashboard because it's not secured in properly and it doesn't kind of fit really well to begin with. Yeah, all the screws and covers are missing off everything, all the dash, as I showed with the top of the dash, but the whole dash area itself is all loose. It does have an aftermarket speedo in it with you know, a 300 km/h speedo, whereas these things only, I think, went up to about 160 k's from the factory. Unsure if it even works. There were almost no dash lights functioning on the vehicle when I got it. I've since replaced all the pod lights. I'm yet to go any further into the dashboard, but it actually came with a bag of LEDs to do a full LED replacement on the dash, and I just sort of was frigging around and pulled the pods off and put LEDs in them. So I actually have all the lights working in the pods now, all on LEDs, and I have an LED globe in the interior light up there, which has this beautiful brown cover. New one of those ordered from Japan. The map light's out at the moment because I've ordered some LEDs for that and I didn't want to put it back in until they were in it. Driver's seat here too, the frame was completely busted when I got the car. I've had the car for a bit over a week now, folks. I actually have done a few little bits and pieces to it. As I mentioned, I've done a hell of a lot of cleaning, but there are a few things like the you know, the LEDs and the pod lights and stuff that I've already sort of addressed. This driver's seat was one of the main ones. The actual seat frame was broken, and all the motors that work all of the adjustment on the seat were all out of time with each other, so it was doing all crazy shit. You'd move the seat forward and it'd go severely to the right. You'd raise it up and only one corner would go up, all that sort of thing. He's quite a big fella that I bought this car off, and whether he's been dropping himself into the seat and broken the back of it down here, which is this corner here, all the seat frame was actually completely broken. I've no idea, but it's all fixed now anyway, folks. I've had a lot of the upholstery off it, and I've re-welded the frame and re-timed all the motors, and I've got a bit of footage of that I'll probably slot into this video somewhere or into one of the other videos. But it's now working really well. I did that just because, well, as I say, I'm going to be replacing all the trim anyway. It's just one less thing to deal with when the time comes. So I guess that's about it for the interior. So I guess we better move into the engine bay, eh? And there it is, folks. And this is where the real value in this car is for me personally. This engine has had a lot of money spent on it, component-wise. According to the guy that I bought the car off, and according to him, guy that he bought the car off, it has a big list of modifications, most of which I've already been able to confirm by looking at the vehicle, but I'll just rattle off a list of what's done to this engine. Alright folks, camera's back on the tripod. I've now got my hand free, which it was before. And I've got a bit of a list here that the previous owner gave to me of all the modifications that are done to this thing. Okay, it has Garrett GD2860 RS turbos. Yes, the famous disco potato. It runs twin disco potatoes. I've confirmed this. I've had this thing up on the hoist, and it does have twin GD2860 RS turbos. It also has MSP exhaust manifolds and an unknown split wastegate dump pipe on it, so that side of it's really good. It supposedly has a heat treated crank, forged rods, forged pistons, ported heads, port matched upper and lower intake manifolds, 1mm oversized valves, JW TR4 cams, BDE cam gears, Nismo 740cc injectors, the Haltech E11 version 2 ECU. It has a Jun lightened flywheel and a Z1 twin plate clutch. It also has a one-piece tail shaft, new engine and transmission mounts. It has a oil cooler with a thermatic sandwich plate, Racing Logic adjustable coilovers, a weird ass looking surge tank under the back of the vehicle with a Bosch 044 fuel pump, which probably works really well, but it's noisy as hell and very old school, so it's all going to go. Obviously we'll be putting a big in-tank pump in the thing. It says here it's got a Turbo Smart dual stage boost controller, but it doesn't. It's only a single stage boost controller. the bloody Blitz turbo timer. It has a mongoose immobiliser fitted to it. HID low beams fitted to the headlights here, which, mind you, been done really badly. The back of the headlights is actually open, so all dust and shit can get in there, and the wiring is really subpar. So what does it go like, you ask? Well, it's a friggin' pig of a thing to drive, and from my understanding, it's been detuned twice since it's been moved on from the original owner. I've got dyno sheets with the car now, and it's currently putting down about 350 horsepower on about 13 psi of boost. But obviously the thing's capable of a lot more. I reckon it'll easily do like 550, maybe 600 horsepower if it's all set up properly and if everything is in good condition and is what I'm led to believe. Obviously I can't check the engine internals without pulling the motor out and pulling a lot of stuff off it, which is going to happen eventually, folks. This is going to be a motor out rebuild. Everything's coming out, motor, driveline, and we are going to start from the very beginning and then start rebuilding it, replacing stuff as we go, double checking everything as we go, just to make sure that everything's been done sort of correctly. It has recently had a high cast delete on it. You can see it's still got the high cast pump and all the lines and the solenoid valves and all that sort of stuff finished. It has been locked out on the back, but all the lines are still there running up through the back of the car and everything. That's all obviously going to go to be done properly. I'll probably just replace that with an NA pump and reservoir. Here you go. I'll show you the rusty battery compartment. So yeah, that's the sort of rusty battery area there. You can see it's pretty shagged. I'm hoping the panel underneath it isn't too bad, but you know, we'll see. I've ordered a new battery tray and everything for it, so that'll all be turning up with all the rest of the crap when it all gets here. It's had a bit of a sort of a paint job. All this blue that you can see on the fan cover there, that's actually underneath the black paint. So at some point it had a pretty leery looking blue bloody paint job on the motor. You can still see it on the throttle cable cover there on the center of the engine, and these beautiful blue silicone hoses. The brake master cylinder and the clutch master cylinder have been leaking fluid for a while, and there's no paint left on the firewall down in here, and the firewall and everything's all quite rusted. So obviously another reason why the engine has to come out, because all that needs to be taken care of before we end up with a real rust problem on this car. At this stage it doesn't appear that there is a major rust problem, but there's certainly the potential for it. Wiring and all that stuff is very messy. A lot of stuff I've looked at isn't very well done. I'll just set this camera back down, folks. Oh, just looking at it there, it's also got an aftermarket radiator. It's got a PWR radiator. There's bits and pieces all through the car that have been done. Oh, it's got big side mount intercoolers fitted to it as well, big aftermarket side mount intercoolers. Someone's really spent the money on this at some point, like the guy who did the original power upgrades and all that sort of stuff. Mate, he's really put some money into this thing. Alright, now that we're that far into it, I think the next logical thing to do is to get the thing up on the hoist, and we'll go under and we'll go deep into the car and have a look at everything underneath that makes the thing run. So give me a sec, folks. I'll set it up on the hoist. We'll get it up in the air and go under, down under. Alright folks, back in the handheld mode. I apologise for shaky, shitty footage in advance, but bear with me. I'm an old man with shaky hands. Some say that comes from too much wanking, but not me. Alright. Let's get under here. Actually, let's start at the back and work our way to the front. Alrighty, so here we have the big Bosch Motorsport 044 pump. Very nice pump in its day. I've run these on several vehicles over the years, but noisy as hell. Particularly how it's mounted here, mounted underneath the spare tyre holder with only a small rubber insulator. Mate, when you turn the ignition on and this pump fires up, if you were trying to have a conversation with someone in the car, you'd be screaming over the top of it. It's got this rinky-dink surge tank made up here, which was probably great bloody 10 years ago or more, but you know, it really just doesn't cut the mustard nowadays. It's pretty poorly made, and it's really just not the way to do stuff. It's got some Driftworks arms on the back here. These are part of the high cast delete thing. You can see the big coilovers. They look pretty old and pretty crusty. I'll have to have a look at them. I probably doubt I'll be keeping them. Rest of the suspension. Oh, look at the wheels, folks. They're sex spec wheels if ever I've seen them. Look at that. Heavy boat metallic dark blue paint on the inside. Rest of the suspension's pretty standard, pretty flogged out. All standard bushings and stuff, you know, nothing sort of to speak of. The car did come with some white line by the look of them, rear diff bushings to replace it with. You can see it's the big R230 differential in there, as opposed to the R200 that's in the non-turbo models. You can see it's got the big beefy axles and all that sort of stuff. Exhaust system, wow. Just a bit of a close-up of some of the sort of welding there. Your tips welded onto the muffler. I don't know what the go with that is, but not the best. As you can see, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of bits and pieces of pipe. This one looks like it's been possibly flared to go over the top of another bit. You can see the straight bits there, folks. That's aluminized pipe, and I'd say the bends are possibly just plain steel mandrel bends, and that's a different outcome that you'll have. This exhaust system's, you know, probably at least around bloody 10 years old, I reckon personally. But it's not supposed to be that old, but I reckon it is. And that's the difference there. So you can see the aluminized pipe does help compared to just plain mild steel as far as rust goes, but it really is only surface rust. This stuff would probably clean up all right if it wasn't just so horrendously put together. If you're watching this video, you probably followed my exhaust system build on the 370 GT twin turbo. This car will be getting pretty much the same exhaust system built for it by me. Different mufflers and stuff obviously, but the same kind of detail. V-band flanges everywhere through the whole thing, decent mandrel bends, nice pipe, big resonators, cats. You can see this thing actually does have cats in it. I'd say they've probably been put in to get the thing you know, registered, or maybe it was defected at some point, no idea. Another thing here just caught my eye. You can see the cables here for the rear battery mount conversion that's been done. It's all just held up with cable ties. Even in the interior, all the interior trim is all askew where the cables have come through. They've made no attempt to you know, make it sort of penetrate into that area properly. They've just kind of shoved the cables in, and they just haven't refitted the trim, or they bent the trim to try and get it over the top. And you can see things like this, folks. This is pretty typical. You've got this cover here was taken off to run this cable through. Now it obviously doesn't fit back up properly. The bolt, you can see it was there because it's nice and clean around where that was, but they've left the bolt out. And yeah, oh, here we go, look at this, that's loose. You can see that's not even done up there. I can turn that with my fingers. So they've had that apart. You can see this is where they've been working along here with this. Just shitty work, folks, and that's what happens unfortunately with a lot of workshops. Oh, here you go, you can see the one-piece tail shaft up here. Unfortunately it was never painted. Looks like it's been supplied in bare metal, and never had a coat of paint on it, folks. So you've got this very well made engineered piece of gear that would have cost quite a lot of money to get made, and it was just never painted, so it just looks like a rusty old pipe up in there. So you can see, folks, even though everything's very worn out and old under here, it's actually all pretty good. All the chassis rails are nice and straight. There's no sign of any impact on the side of the vehicle. Unfortunately, all of the pinch welds are pretty much screwed on the car. You can see here how much that pinch weld has been squashed up and rolled under. It's like that in a lot of areas on the car. People put all sorts of jacks and sort of stuff under the cars and just, you know, kind of wreck stuff when they're jacking it up. There is a mark in the bottom of the sort of main chassis rail through here where someone's jacked the car up with something and sort of pushed the bottom of the rail in. Just here, you've got the same thing on the other side. You can see some sort of a tooling imprint just there, that something's, I don't know, a jack or something's been used under there. People are just such morons when it comes to cars, folks, honestly. I'll be able to pull all those out and fix it up though. I'll probably end up painting the whole underside of the vehicle actually. We'll see. Once it's all stripped out, it'll be a lot easier to get a bit of an idea of everything. Alright, we're at the front now. You can see the the dump pipes there. You can see the separate wastegate merge on the dump pipes. See the turbos up there. You probably can't tell from here, but they're definitely disco potatoes. I've had a bit of a look at them. You can see the way this thermostatic sandwich plate's been fitted here, and all the sort of all the hoses run and everything. It's all pretty shoddy. There's oil leaks on pretty much everything. There's quite a significant oil leak on this side of the vehicle, and what it is, the drain back for the turbo on this side has cracked or something at some point, and it's been very, very badly welded, and it hasn't sealed it, so it's got a, you know, this drain back leaks like a bastard. It's just constantly dripping out oil. Like I say, it has been repaired, but it hasn't been repaired. There you go. You see this turbo a little bit better. You can see the inlet on the front there. It's not a standard inlet. It's, you know, it's got a big, it looks like it's got a 3-inch or so inlet on it, which the standard turbo doesn't have. And even the silicon joiner on the outlet up there, which the standard turbos are a bolt together affair. You can see it's pretty oily under here. There's lots of leaks. A lot of it seems to be like lines and things like that. I don't think the sump's leaking necessarily and stuff. It looks like there are some leaks to do possibly with the power steering, because it's pretty oily in and around this area. Like I say, it's all got to come out and all be either rebuilt or checked over, sort of thing, you know. The box is pretty grubby looking. It's got to come out. I've got to sort out this clutch, see what to go with it is, because it's really, really aggressive. It just makes the car not nice to drive. It actually came with another clutch, a single plate. Looks like a reasonable sort of a clutch. I've got to look into it a bit more, but I am going to turn the wick up on this thing, and I figure the clutch that's in it is probably the best clutch for the power that it potentially can make. Whether or not the new clutch that's come with the car is able to handle that amount of power, I've got to look further into it and just kind of see what's going on with it. But you can see there's a few bolts missing off stuff in general. There's a bolt missing there out of the bell housing. Lots of stuff loose. I noticed this here before. This is the speed sensor, I think, for the passenger side front wheel. You can see it's actually loose. The bolt here on the bottom isn't in all the way, and it just kind of pops in and out. Very nice, just because someone hasn't done the bolt up. But as I say, folks, that's what you get. Bit of a friggin' mess across the front here with these oil cooler lines, the way they've been routed and all sort of cable tied together, the way it sort of comes through into the front. You can see it's had a bit of ducting done on the front of the vehicle, similar to what I did recently on the twin turbo 370 GT, but more something that looks like it's been done by a 10-year-old child. But they've had a go, so that's good. But yeah, it leaves a bit to be desired. You can see the aftermarket side mount intercoolers up here. They're pretty big, beefy sort of units, cast end tanks on them. They've been sort of ducted as well. The ducting on those is marginally better, but still pretty crap. Looking up through the hole in the front there, you can see the oil cooler there. I think it's a Japanese brand, not sure. But some air cleaners up in there, sort of a twin filter arrangement going on up in there. This front bar's rooted, as you can see. It's hit something at some point and just kind of smashed it. It's all sort of pretty loose, broken. All the clips are broken up on the top there. Yeah, this thing with the wheels is kind of, I can't really work that one out. 18's on the front and 17's on the back with the same centers in them, and you can see they're obviously a different rim, but same centers in them. I don't know, maybe someone else can help me out with that. They're going anyway, folks. The wheels aren't staying. I'll put something a little bit nicer on it. So you can see the car does have a lot of potential, folks. There's a lot of money has been spent on the car. There seems to be a lot of value in components on it, which is what attracted me to the vehicle. It really just needs a lot of work, which is kind of where I'm at with this sort of stuff. I don't mind getting down and dirty with cars like this, and I'm sure you guys feel the same, just by the fact that you're actually tuning into my channel and watching me do stuff. So hopefully, folks, as I say, this will be a full build. Everything's coming out of the car and we are starting with the shell. So we've got to take care of that sort of rust in the engine bay and paint the engine bay and, you know, tidy up the motor and just the whole business, build exhaust systems. You know, there'll be a lot of fabrication involved in doing this. Full interior. Yeah, it's going to be a very involved build. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, folks, you better bloody well tune in. Otherwise you're going to miss out. Alright, let's get it down off the hoist and we'll have another look at it. Alright folks, she's back down but still on the hoist. This is where it's going to be spending most of its time. There's probably a lot of stuff that I've forgotten about and haven't gone over. Oh, it did come with a lot of stuff. It came with some, you know, bits and pieces. It came with new mouldings on both sides, up the windscreen, over the targa tops and the little pieces on the back of the roof. So it's come with new mouldings of those. It did come with a new rear spoiler, a new boot spoiler, because as you saw, the one that's on it at the moment is shagged, and it is a Twin Z design rear spoiler, which is a very nice spoiler and a very expensive piece, I might add. So very happy to have that. Yeah, the new clutch, bits and pieces, like I say, came with some LEDs for the dashboard, and you know, it's got bags for the targa tops, and you know, a boss kit for a sports steering wheel, which I won't be using because I'm going to get the factory wheel redone, you know, just to keep that kind of original look to it. So what's my plan and my goals for the vehicle, folks? Well, obviously, as I said, it's going to be a complete rebuild, but what I'd like to describe it as is an OEM plus rebuild, and that's quite a common term that people are using now on the internet and on YouTube. Basically, what I'd like to do is rebuild the car in a way that it would be built if it was built by Nissan currently. So the car has to be very nice to drive, which is the total opposite of how it is now. It's bloody terrible to drive, but it has the potential to be really, really good. So yeah, I figure if my missus can't drive it, then I've done something wrong. So I'm aiming at around 500 or 600 horsepower with the vehicle. It is quite a small, light vehicle, so that will be a very, very fast car. It's got to be reliable. It can't be friggin' breaking down all the time. And it's got to be nice. So a lot of the interior I will be replacing with black leather and Alcantara. You know, just new stuff wherever it needs it. Any of the plastics and stuff like that are broken. They're all going to be replaced. All the seals are going to be replaced. Screen's going to be replaced. Front bar's going to be replaced. I've looked at a lot of different bars at the moment, but I can't really find one that I like. So I think we'll wrap this up here, folks. Before I go, there's a few people I'd like to thank that made this all possible, particularly my mate Scotty Mac. He helped me acquire the vehicle. I picked this up in a state, so we had to get a car trailer, drive into state, big long drive, pick up the car and get back. Scotty drove with his vehicle, and mate, without him I wouldn't have been able to get the thing. Scotty's got a really nice car too. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to get that on the channel. Also like to thank Mark, who works for Scotty, whose car trailer we used to pick the car up with. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the previous owner, Tyler. He was really, really good to deal with the whole process of purchasing the vehicle. Like I say, he was in a state. He was very helpful with photos and info and really easy to contact. You know, always got back to me really quickly with emails and bloody all that sort of stuff. Just overall, really decent young fella. Alright folks, that's long enough for this video. So, as always, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're as excited about this thing as I am, leave a comment. Come back for all the future videos. And as always, folks, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.